go on record then, Randa.
Okay.
We're good to go?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, the time is now 7:04. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Planning Commission for February 3rd, 2021. If we could please have the clerk call roll.
Mr. McLeister,
Present?
Mr. Dalpays,
Present.
Mr. Mahousen,
Present.
Mr. Sarah,
Present.
Mr. Volas.
Here.
All right. I'd like to move on to item number 3 of our list. And actually, before we get going, if I could ask everybody to mute their lines, that would be great. Getting a little bit of an echo. Item number 3 on our agenda for tonight is the submittal of the December 2nd, 2020 meeting minutes for approval. And I'd be looking for a motion for that item.
This is Tom there. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Tom. We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second for the approval of the December 2nd meeting minutes?
I'll second Eric Dalpays.
All right, thank you, Eric. And can we call the roll on that, call the vote?
Mr. Dalpays,
Yes.
Mr. Sarah,
Yes.
Mr. McLeister,
Yes.
Mr. Volas,
Yes.
Mr. Mahousen.
Yes.
Okay, item passed. Next item on our list is item number 4, which is the organizational portion of this meeting, which is the election of the officers for 2021. The 2 positions we will be seeking nominations for would be for the chairman and for the vice chair. So at this point in time, will open up nominations for the position of chairman.
This is Peter Volas. I'd like to nominate Jamie McLeister for the chairman position.
All right, thank you so very much. I do accept. And do we have a second for the nomination of myself, Jamie McLeister, for the position of chairman?
This is Brian Mahal.
Second.
All right, I think we had a second there. Could we please call the vote? Or I guess I should ask, let me be diplomatic, are there any other nominations from the floor? Hearing none. Randa, could you please call the vote for us?
Mr. Sarah,
Yes.
Mr. Mahousen,
Yes.
Mr. Volas,
Yes.
Mr. McLeister,
Yes.
Mr. Dalpays.
Yes.
Thank you. And we'll move on to nominations for the vice chair of the Planning Commission. And I would like to nominate Eric Dalpays for vice chair, if he would accept.
This is Peter Volas. I will second that nomination.
Great. Are there any other nominations for the position of vice chair? Hearing none, could we please call the vote for Eric Dalpays to serve as vice chair for 2021?
Mr. Volas,
Yes.
Mr. Mahousen,
Yes.
Mr. McLeister,
Yes.
Mr. Sarah,
Yes.
Mr. Dalpays.
Yes.
All right. That concludes the organizational portion of our meeting. And so now we'll move on to item number 5.
Hey, Jamie, can we scroll down so everybody can see the agenda on the screen?
Sure. That would be,
Please.
yeah, actually, could you do that, Randa?
Thank you.
We're moving on to item number 5, which is in item 5 and 6 are talking about the same project, but item 5 is a conditional use permit for a proposed building addition, height of 46 feet, 9.5 inches in accordance with North Canton Ordinance 1139.06A. And the application is 219 or NCPC-0001. And the property is located at 334 Orchard Avenue Northeast, North Canton, Ohio. I think, did we have one of our committee members who wanted to abstain here, I think?
Jamie, this is Tom Sarah.
Yes, sir.
I would like to excuse myself from the remainder of the Planning Commission meeting due to personal business conflict on the next 2 topics.
That's acceptable here. And we thank you very much for joining for the beginning portion of the meeting. And Randa, could you please notify us once he is signed off?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, he's off.
Okay. And could we let the record reflect that Tom Sarah did disconnect from the meeting at 7:10 p.m.? Okay. As this is a conditional use permit, and this will be technically an adjudication hearing, could we please have the clerk swear in those who wish to speak this evening?
Clerk or the court reporter?
Oh, I'm sorry, the court reporter. I apologize.
Okay, I cannot see everyone, so I will ask you, after I swear you in, whenever you come up to speak, please indicate that you have taken the oath. So, to each of you who intend to speak in this matter, swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Okay, thank you so very much. So do we have anybody from the applicant who would like to walk us through this project? And again, we'll be voting first on the conditional use. But if you wanted to walk us through the entirety of the project, that would be great. And if you could state your name once you unmute yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. This is Jeff Martin on behalf of ICP.
Perfect.
Also an oath taker. Appreciate everyone's time this evening. Wanted to just spend a few minutes, giving you a few high-level comments about the project, and then, I will pass the mic over to a few of our consultants that have been actively working on this project for the past several months. Just want to say, we're excited to add a significant number of new jobs and consolidate, several jobs on behalf of Diebold Nixdorf into an expanded campus for them in downtown North Canton. This is, something that we're really excited about. It's been a great partnership with Diebold over the past several months, and ICP has, put a lot of trust and faith in this partnership, and we know this is going to be a great thing for both companies moving forward. I will say, we are working under a very accelerated time frame, which staff is aware of. As a result of our meeting back in December, all of our teams, design team from both the applicant's side and the city have been hard at work, collaborating on this effort to try and deliver an expanded building for Diebold by October of this calendar year. And, that's kind of a shell delivery. Thereafter, they will have, several months of interior build out before they start actually moving employees into the new area. But hope is that this would come online in kind of late first quarter of 2022. So as a caveat, there are a lot of design elements that are still kind of getting fine tuned and refined, as we go. through this process. So, wanted to just share that this is a 135,000 square foot and change building expansion, attached to the existing building. Of particular note, and one of the primary reasons we're here for the conditional use permit is with respect to the building height. It's a little bit hard to tell from the plans that were submitted, but I will call to note that the existing height of the building fronting Orchard Street on the western elevation will remain at 34 feet 6 inches. And then the back portion, kind of the eastern half of the building, kind of concealed from public view, is popping up to that 46 foot 9.5 inch dimension, which is what the request for relief is for here tonight. So that pops up over their warehouse facility. So that was a tenant request that we are trying to accommodate. And in connection with the 135,000 square foot building addition, we will be it sounds like finally paving some parking lots around this building, which sounds like it's overdue. And, we'll have close to, I think, right around 800 paved parking spaces with new landscape islands and landscaping and lighting. So that'll be a nice kind of cleanup of the site. Also want to pay particular attention to, the environmental conditions with this site. Ownership is, very aware of the environmental conditions of the site, and we have environmental consultants who have been working with us very closely, and frankly, working closely with the US EPA and Ohio EPA on any remaining environmental concerns for the property. And environmental considerations have been taken into account during the planning for this site. As the development progresses, environmental concerns will be monitored very carefully every step of the way. So, with that, I will stop talking and, can answer questions later, but would probably turn, to Craig Sanders with Freeman for some additional color on the design.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Yes, my name is Craig Sanders, and I have taken the oath to affirm the truth. We are involved with the folks at ICP in developing this project for them, as Mr. Martin so eloquently spoke regarding the 135,000 square foot addition to the north side of the existing facility that's currently being used by the Diebold people. The specific request tonight for the conditional use is, simply put, the tenants will be needing a 40-foot clear interior storage height, and consequently, by the time we add the rest of the structure to the building, it pushes us into that 46-foot 9.5 inch range, or not range, but that'll what sort of the overall height will become to accommodate that 40-foot clear storage height. With that, we've accommodated additional parking, 470 spaces, which at this point really, again, doesn't necessarily speak specifically to the point right at the moment, but we have looked at the zoning code items, and I believe at this point we have a solid project for the community. And with that, I'll relinquish the floor.
Well, thank you very much. And actually, before we go further, before I kick it over to Mr. Van Gundy for the city's comments, do we have any drawings we want to show? Because I know we do have a number of members of the public that might want to see this as well.
Yes, if you scroll down to basically page 31 of 31 of the PC agenda packet, you will see the exterior elevations of the building.
Thank you.
And Chair, I might just chime in quickly that, these exterior elevations are, still very much a work in progress. We are, continuing to work with Diebold and their design team and, our team to, enhance these elevations, which, here are just black and white elevations that have a very industrial feel. And I think, we're going to do our part to soften that, along the Orchard Boulevard street to make it more aesthetically pleasing elevation.
Okay. Thank you for that input there. Was there anybody else from the applicant who wanted to speak on this?
Oh, yes, this is Craig Sanders again. I affirm
Yes, sir.
tell the truth. I just wanted to point out, I know it was Mr. Martin had mentioned previously, but yeah, basically the face of the building that faces Orchard Avenue, the height of that building will be the same height as the current Diebold facility to the south. And like I say, with the elevation, with a 2D elevation, you don't necessarily see the depth. All you see is this giant wall there. But as if you look at the north elevation on sheet 31 of 31 of your PC agenda packet, you see you see the step or the transition that occurs roughly 140 feet back off of that western face of the building to where it makes the transition up to the higher elevation. I look at this as you're going up and down Main Street. More than likely, as you look over there, due to line of sight, you're really not going to notice the differential in height. Now, obviously, as you get closer to it, or as you go to the south or to the north, you might be noticed. But like I say, from Main Street, I think it's gonna provide a fairly consistent view, so that it's not going to appear that it's like this giant, monstrous building attached to the current one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And also maybe, again, so we can put up for the benefit of the members of the community, and I will say my drawings don't necessarily match up number-wise, since I have a large set here. What would be the page number to show the overhead view so everybody can see sort of the scope of the project?
You mean the elevations?
Maybe yeah, the elevation. Yeah, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Probably site plan is what it's probably referring to.
Okay.
Page 27, I think it's 31.
Perfect. Yep, that's the one I got in front of me right there. Okay. All right, Mr. Van Gundy, comments from the city. Mr. Van Gundy, are you still on?
How about now?
Oh, we got you. We got you. Okay.
For some reason, it did not unmute. All right, my apologies. I will start over. I was a little ways into my presentation here. As I mentioned here while I was muted, we've held a number of meetings over the last month or so, coordinating the zoning code, the North Canton ordinances, and the Ohio building code. As some of the applicable regulations, we have met with the departments in the city and accumulated comments on this, many of which have been addressed up to this point. Some are work in progress. As we talked about, this is an industrial use. The zoning district we're located in is a limited industrial with a mixed use overlay. The project is consistent with the zoning and the district it sits within. We have a couple items to note in some recommended conditions of approval. I think, the first one we'd be looking at is, I'll read that list separately, but there's a couple of these that we have some code sections that, I'd like to talk about. As noted in the item, the request is for a conditional use permit to build the addition to a height of 46 feet, 9.5 inches. If we look at the zoning code section 1139.06, parent A, that provides for a maximum height of 35 feet. However, that same section goes on to say that the principal building, which this is, may exceed, or may be in excess of 35 feet as a conditional use when the Planning Commission determines the conditional use criteria set forth in sections 114502 and 114503 have been met. And this was part of the review. With that, staff is recommending an approval of a height not to exceed 47 feet, which does allow for some construction tolerances there, and with 7 conditions, which are on the screen before you. And if you'd like, I will read through each one of these for the record.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 1, all work shall be in accordance with the North Canton codified ordinances and Ohio Building Code. Condition 2, coordinate with the chief building official prior to the issuance of the building permit to identify how the maximum area of the building will be increased in accordance with section 506 of the Ohio Building Code. Condition 3, address each of the fire department comments identified in the attached letter dated January 29th, 2021. Once I get done reading these comments, we'll go to that letter next. Condition 4, coordinate with the United States Environmental Protection Agency for any approvals to proceed with any construction. Condition 5, provide approved stormwater management plans. This includes the stormwater quality and the stormwater quantity for the proposed building and parking lots in accordance with North Canton Ordinance Chapter 943, prior to the issuance of any building permits and/or commencement of construction. Condition 6, provide landscape plans for review and approval prior to installing any landscaping. Number 7, provide a recorded and fully executed Mylar copy of the recorded plat showing the new Outlaw 426, which comes to us by merging Outlaw 368 and Outlaw 370 to achieve the buildable area required by North Canton Ordinance Schedule 113904, Item 3. And that schedule comes to us in zoning code section 113904B, which has a maximum area of 30%. And as a result of that zoning code, one of the items that has been addressed leading to this meeting was it is a replat where the property line to the north of the addition is proposed going away, essentially merging those 2 parcels. And by that, the property is in compliance with that 30% rule. And
Okay.
With that, would you like to review the fire letter as well?
Yes, I think that'd be a good idea. Let's pull that up.
Okay. So many of these comments are typical comments that would be reviewed in the building plan review process. The fire department, the building department has a good working relationship where we coordinate these ahead of the zoning meetings, well into and through the plan review and inspection process. But it is helpful getting these letters out before you early on in the phase of the project so everyone knows what the expectations are early in the process. So comment number 1 is reference to fire protection. The drawings reflect removal of the underground fire line and all the attached valving along the north side of the existing building. Detailed drawings shall be submitted to address reconnecting the sprinkler risers to the fire line on the north wall. Comment number 2, existing underground fire line, removal, replacement, or relocation of piping, valves, or fire hydrants shall be part of the detailed drawings. Comment 3, a detailed plan for the connecting of the existing underground fire line to the proposed new underground fire line shall be submitted for review and approved by all parties prior to the start of that phase of the project. Comment 4, provide detailed drawings for the new gate and fencing on Howard Street for the new proposed rear driveway, reference to the access to the fire pump house. Comment 5, existing warehouse. The drawings show the existing exit door from the loading dock and the exit door from the warehouse to the north. Verify travel distance for the emergency evacuation. The drawings do not reflect an existing exit door on the east side of the building. Comment number 6, existing building number 30 to the rear of the existing warehouse, what has been determined, reference fire protection and future use. That concludes the comments. Excuse me. One item it doesn't conclude the comments. Comment 7, the new fire line on the north side of the new building need to provide additional information for access and road service. Comment 8, additional drawings for the new building, fire separation, underground fire line, sprinkler system, fire alarm system, fire extinguisher placement, Knox box location shall be reviewed when submitted. Okay, so that concludes the fire comments on that. Another item I'd like to point out is this project would be an outright permitted use had it not been for the height in excess of 35 foot. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions, or if you'd like any more information, I'm happy to help with that as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van Gundy. At that point, I'd like to open it up to members of the Planning Commission. If you have any questions for either Mr. Van Gundy or for the applicant.
This is Mr. Mahalson. I have a question with regard to the height. I'm assuming that the height is to the top of the parapet. And related to that, will this be the tallest building in North Canton, or does the existing Hoover complex exceed that now?
So I can answer the first part of the question in regards to the measurement of the height. That does measure to the top of the parapet. The roof sits a few inches below the top of the parapet. The second part of the question, I'm not sure. Can Jeff Martin answer that question, or one of the ICP team members?
I cannot.
Yeah, sorry. I was just dropping down to Google Street View to take a look at it. I know it's not going to exceed the height of the smokestack, but I believe it is taller than the West Factory building.
Okay, but the fire department has no concern about the hook and ladder access to the maximum height of the building. I'm assuming since the fire department has not identified that, it's not an issue.
That was not identified as a concern from the fire department, and again, they have been involved in the meetings as well.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Mahalson?
No.
Okay. Any other members of the commission have any questions or comments about this?
This is Eric Delpace.
Yes, sir.
I just have a question about the parking layout, Martin. Just looking at this and digging into it somewhat, I assume this meets all the setbacks and island guidelines for parking regarding all the parking lots surrounding this, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Anything else, Mr. Delpace?
No, and I guess I just want, to clarify, like Martin mentioned, if it wasn't for the height, we wouldn't really even be looking at this very closely. So I guess I would say, I appreciate everybody's involvement on this and getting the information through and making sure it's all meeting all the guidelines as much as possible here. It seems like the height is the defining factor. Once the lot replat is completed, everything else seems to comply. So a lot of effort has definitely gone into this.
Okay. Any other comments from members of the Planning Commission?
Yeah, this is Peter Vollis. A couple questions for the applicant. Can you please confirm who the tenant is?
Sure. Hi, Peter. It's an expansion of Diebold Nixdorf's existing facility. So they'll be adding on to the existing building and combining the two buildings.
Are you able to share with me, is it the parent company or is it a subsidiary that's the tenant?
All of our negotiations have been with the parent company and the lease is with the parent company.
Okay. And are you able to share with us the term of the lease?
I believe it's a 10-year base term.
Okay. And no further questions.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from members of the Planning Commission?
This is Mr. Mahalson again. Just one other question. The owner of the facility, the existing and the new facility, is the developer ICP?
So technically, it's a joint venture between ICP and IRG, and the entity name is Maple Street Commerce LLC and Maple Street IO LLC, but it's a venture between ICP and IRG.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. All right. With that, I would like to open it up to questions or comments from members of the community. But I'd like to, I know we've got a fair number of people on the call today, so I'd like to do so in an orderly fashion. Do we have a list of people who said they wanted to speak already, Randa?
Yes, I do have a list.
Okay. Do we want to just go ahead and call off that list? And then when we get to the bottom of that list, if there were people who were kind of on the fence, if they could then speak at that point, I'll leave it up to you to maybe call people. And then if you could remain on mute until you're called, that would be much appreciated.
Okay, Joe?
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Edwin Good Jr.?
Edwin seems to be muted. He may not be able to unmute himself. Do you have that ability, Randa, to unmute his microphone?
Yeah, I had to find him in the list.
Okay.
Edwin, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, no, not at this time. Sorry.
No problem.
Thank you.
Karen?
Nothing at this time.
Michael or Sarah?
I'm Michael. Michael and Sarah. Sarah's on the phone. We actually have concerns kind of an impact to the neighborhood It does adjoin up to the neighborhood here. What is it? Hoover Heights neighborhood. It is going to be a very large building, and also with a lot of parking for semis behind it. Along with semis comes a tremendous amount of noise impact. And on top of that, it's a very low-lying area with drainage problems already. And I do not want to see the runoff from this building making a problem that's already there worse. Plus the visual impact for the neighborhood, having to look at this extremely tall building for the North Canton, for that matter, possibly affecting the home's values in this area.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. And next person on the list?
Cindy?
Nothing at this time. Mike pretty much said. I also kind of just wanted to know what was planned for the green buffer in between the neighborhood and the building.
Do we have any information on that, Mr. Van Gundy, or anybody from the applicant?
Yes, as we understand the code, the property directly to the north of the proposed addition, there's a requirement for, I believe, 10 foot, and Mr. Gundy can correct me if that, but 10-foot wide landscape buffer, and the intent was that would run the entire length of the combined or the adjacent property lines along that separate those two.
Yes. Right. This is Jeff Martin. I would also add, we're kind of creating some new voids in which we'll backfill with additional trees to plug any openings that might be created as a result of some of the other site work. So doing this with our neighbors definitely in mind to make sure that we're not creating any voids where you're going to have clear sight lines to the building.
Thank you very much for that explanation. Randa, who do we have next on the list?
Anthony?
I don't have any comment this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
And Chuck?
Mr. Osborne, did you want to speak this evening? Is he connected by a phone? I don't see audio next to his name, Randa.
Yeah, he's computer and phone.
Do I have the floor now?
Oh, yes, Mr. Osborne. Yep.
Yes. Right off the bat, I just was curious. I had heard no mention of the dollar cost or investment. I'm sure this is a few $1 million, number one. But I'd like to provide some perspective here. I'm really shocked and stunned. We've finally arrived to this point. And I want to give you a little perspective. I was not happy with the expansion that took place on the southern end of the Maple Street property. They devastated the whole area. They did not comply with the zoning code. There's like a dozen violations. But apart from that, let me just give you a perspective. During that time period when we were dealing with the expansion to the south in 2014, my group had a chance to meet with Maple Street Commerce. Carol Smith was the spokesperson at the time. And during our hour-long discussion, she just volunteered that they had been approached by a manufacturer who wanted to add on to the warehouse and I guess take over the whole area. And she immediately told them at the time this was not possible. The area is just devastated with toxic poison, and they would never even venture down that path. So that was in 2014. No chance of ever expanding over there. We saw here in, I think, about 2017, Panera was going to build over there at Charlotte and Main Street. And when they became aware of the contamination, we all have seen that that restaurant never did materialize as was hyped by Maple Street Commerce. Here just a couple of years ago, the city was offered for free a little over 3 acres to build a safety center. It's my understanding that the TCE levels in the toxic plume have to be below a certain level before the EPA will let you build. And since the city has moved on to the post office property for their proposed safety center location, I can only assume that the TCE levels in the groundwater were too high. I don't know. I can't verify that. Where the expansion of the is going to be taking place is right on top of the 3 settling ponds where all the contamination fed into the groundwater and poisoned the entire area. And I'm just stunned that somebody would want to build there. I don't know how many millions it's going to take to try and make the building safe. I am aware that the EPA has stipulated how the samplings that need to be taken place to see if the TCE levels and whatever other pollution levels, if they drop low enough to allow them to build. But there's a email that I have in my possession. There are poisons right along Main Street, the old Fleckinger property. I'm sorry?
Mr. Osborne, respectfully, this board does not have jurisdiction when it comes to EPA or possible contamination. I don't know that this is the proper venue, and I do see that Mr. Boyer has raised his hand. If he would like to weigh in on it, I'd welcome him.
Well, I'd like to finish, and I'm not going to be speaking on it because both issues are all related. But the commission should have a perspective on what is taking place here. And sadly, with such a large Superfund site, or you may want to prefer to call it a brownfield site, I'm surprised we don't have something in our zoning code to ensure the protection of the employees that are going to be working there and the general public who may have an opportunity to come in and view the property. So anyway, you should be aware of all this prior situation. Sure. And I think it's premature that you're here before the commission. You don't even know if the EPA is going to give you permission to build. And I don't know why this is an expedited, let's throw this up and talk about these issues later kind of situation.
Thank you,
Mr. Osborne.
I'm not done yet.
Mr. Osborne, please allow me to interject. This is Law Director Boyer. I did take the oath. Ultimately, all of the issues, I understand where you're coming from. I understand your concerns, but none of those issues are in front of the board at the moment. None of those issues are, quite frankly, relevant to the discussion that's happening. We're concerned exclusively with the conditional use permit that's in front of us related to building height. And please keep in mind, sir, I didn't hear whether or not you took the oath, but regardless, a fair amount of the information that you are sharing would be hearsay, is not in front of the board for us to verify in one way or another. And so I would respectfully request that you keep all comments related solely to the conditional use permit at issue this evening.
Well, I did take the oath, and this is not hearsay. I've lived it myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Randa, do we have anybody else on the list to speak this evening?
I think Daryl possibly wanted a chance.
Okay. Mr. Revolt, excuse me, Dr. Revolt.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I think the Director of Law has indicated that this is a conditional use matter that is pending before you. And I would just like to add a couple of points in context which circle around this issue for your consideration this evening. First of all is that the request before you is the first new site development that we've had in probably a dozen years or more. So it's critical to the development of the site. The second is that this project, upon which this conditional use depends, adds employment to the city. We lost some significant jobs when Schroer relocated. This will allow us to infill those positions. We're very fortunate that we've come through COVID because our local economy is diversified, and this is another step in the diversification of that economy, very critical. Another element is this project is going to go forward without a tax incentive. That's good news for our school. That was a commitment that the city made to the school, that we would try to avoid using tax abatements whenever possible. And so we have pursued another strategy in this matter. Fourth is, and I think we've alluded to it, here's a wonderful opportunity to clean up Main Street. We've got a problematic parking lot. It's essentially unchanged since Hoover left. And we've got an opportunity to re-landscape it, pave it, beautify it. And with the development coming with the school and some other things that are happening, this is a really a great development. And finally, I would simply say this, and I know that environmental issues are not subject for our discussion tonight, but the fact of the matter is the US EPA and the Ohio EPA are supervising the matter, and the environmental issues that have been referenced are largely manageable. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Revolt. Randy, do we have anybody else on the list?
Not that I'm aware of.
I think there were some people who did not respond affirmatively when we first asked at the beginning of the call. So I guess at this point, anybody out there who would like to speak that has not spoken already?
Hi, if I may. My name is Michael Jacobson. I've taken the oath.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jacobson.
Absolutely. So again, I'm Mike Jacobson. I'm a spokesperson for Diebold Nixdorf. And just want to say on behalf of the company, as a member of the North Canton community, we are excited about the opportunity to expand our presence in North Canton. As a lessee of the North Canton property, we're working, as was alluded earlier tonight, we're working very closely with the property owner, ICP, and all appropriate government and environmental agencies to ensure the site where we plan to expand is safe for our employees, safe for the surrounding community, and suitable for construction. And ICP is in the process of securing US EPA approvals to expand our North Canton facility prior to any construction. And as always, we are committed to conducting our operations at the site in accordance with local, state, and federal environmental protection laws and regulations, both for our benefit and for the benefit of the North Canton community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jacobson. And actually, while you're on there, to Councilmember Revolt's point, we are talking over 400 jobs. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Ballpark. Yes, absolutely. So the way that expansion is going to work is we'll have approximately 400 additional jobs identified for that facility, but it's going to be a flexible work environment consistent with our global real estate strategy. So in terms of there can be a lot of flexible workers there. So okay. We'll have like like anchored employees of about 100 and flexible would be more like 300. So at any one point or another, we'll have an additional, 200-300 like physical people there. But from an overall headcount perspective, that's correct. It'll be approximately 400 folks.
Okay, thanks for the explanation. And last call for anybody else from the community who has not gotten a chance to speak on the conditional use portion here this evening.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
This is Daryl Revolt. I neglected to indicate that I had taken and affirmed the oath.
Okay. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Mayor Wilder here.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. The floor is yours if you'd like to speak.
Yes, thank you. I have taken the oath, and I just want to show my appreciation or state my appreciation for the information provided by the representative of ICP, IRG, and Diebold Nixdorf, and that the proposed site seems certainly advantageous for the development and for Diebold Nixdorf, and the potential for the job creation and vitality and energy bringing back to this portion of our community. And in regards to the height of the building, I was just kind of curious, is the top two floors, or you said the east half of the building is at one level, and will it be like two more stories above that, the existing complex?
This is Craig Sanders. And,
Yes, Craig.
What we have is the eastern half of the building, or eastern 2/3 of the building. If you go to sheet 30 of 31.
Got it.
You see the warehouse portion, warehouse 100 there, which at that point, that's the taller portion of the building.
Okay.
And then the western portion of the building that says future office 101, that will be the build out area that will occur after the main building has been erected.
Thank you very much. No, I understand the plan a little bit better now, but again, thank you for your presentation, and I'll leave it up to the commission for the conditional approval, but it certainly is exciting to see a partnership with Diebold Nixdorf in the city of North Canton. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Chairman McLeister.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, last call for anybody to discuss the conditional use portion, which is item number 5 on tonight's agenda.
This is Brian Mahalson. Just one issue that had come up by one of the neighbors with regard to a concern for stormwater, and just addressing that either by the city, just with explaining that any stormwater runoff and stormwater containment would have to be controlled through design, either through detention or retention or by other means.
Mr. Mahalson, this is Martin, and I'd be happy to address that. Good question. The stormwater condition, so if Planning Commission chooses to take staff recommendation with the approval of the 7 conditions, if you point your attention to condition number 5, and that is exactly one of the many things that would be reviewed as part of that. And to further clarify, these conditions are stipulations that would hold up a building permit. So if they don't, and I have full confidence they will, but if, let's say worst case scenario happens and the stormwater plan was not approved by the engineering department in Stark Soil and Water, that would hold up the building permit and construction could not commence at that point. But This has been discussed with the design team, the applicant, when we held the large pre-application meeting back in December. And there seems to be a fairly good consensus of what is expected, and the overall general understanding was this will be achieved by the submittal of the building permit review.
Thank you, Mr. Van Gundy. And Mr. Mahousen, does that answer your question?
Absolutely. It was for the benefit of the neighbors concerned.
Perfect.
Mr. McLeister, this is Peter Vollis. I've got a couple follow-up questions.
Yes, sir.
Since there was some comments about economic development. I know we mentioned how many jobs this project is going to create for the city, but has anybody from either the city, the applicant, or the tenant determined what that income tax impact is, as well as what the potential real estate tax income is?
This is Patrick from the city, and yes, we have.
Are you able to share that with the committee?
I'd be willing to share that with you outside the scope of this meeting. I don't think it pertains to this project approval for the conditional use, but I'm happy to share it with you. I mean, it is a public record, but I really don't want to see the Planning Commission, addressing matters that might indicate that, approval could not go for the lack of the answer to that question.
I've asked this question before on other Planning Commission meetings, and I've always gotten an answer. And I really think it's relevant to the conversation, please.
We respectfully disagree.
Any other questions or comments, and Mr. Vollis?
Not at this time.
Okay. Are there any other comments from members of the Planning Commission? At this point, I would be looking to entertain a motion for item number 5 on our agenda. And I think that in doing so, we should keep in mind the comments and the provisions that Martin has put up here for us, Mr. Van Gundy has put up for us. So do we have a motion?
This is Peter Vollis. I motion to approve the project subject to the conditions that Mr. Van Gundy outlined in items 1 through 7, as well as the comments from the fire and the fire department. I think that's what the letter from the fire department as written.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vollis. All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
This is Mr. Mahousen. I will second.
All right, we have a second from Mr. Mahousen. Randa, could you please call the vote?
Mr. Mahousen?
Yes.
Mr. Vollis?
Yes.
Mr. Dalpace?
Yes.
Mr. McLeister?
Yes. All right, item number 5 has passed. We'll move on to item number 6, which is the same project, and it is application number 21 NCPC-0002, again at 334 Orchard Avenue Northeast, North Canton, Ohio 44720. And this is the general development review for the construction of the 135,460 square foot warehouse and office addition to existing building and parking. Do we have anything additional to go over with this? I guess I'd ask the applicant or Mr. Van Gundy.
This is Jeff Martin again, oath taker.
Yes,
and I don't believe we have any additional comments at this time.
Okay, Thank you. And Mr. Van Gundy, anything additional from the city for item number 6?
Thank you, Chairman. Nothing additional. I would, similar to the previous item, the details, much of which we've discussed is consistent with the zoning code. Similarly, staff recommends approval with the condition of the same 7 items.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything from members of the commission? Any comments on this? Hearing none, I will open up, and this is again just for the benefit of members of the community who are joining us this evening. This is for item number 6, not the conditional use, which was already voted. So is there anybody who has any comments on a general review, or general development review nature?
Yes, this is Edwin Good.
Yes, Mr. Good.
I live on Howard Street, and my concern is my backyard butts up to the back of the Hoover parking lot, which is a marsh. And in a rainy weather, we get flooded a lot. Now, is the water from that going to cause more problem? Or are they, I heard that they're going to address that issue, but my concern is my yard will be underwater if it rains any kind like we did a couple of years ago.
Chairman, if I may
yes, sir.
Mr. Good.
I was going to come to you anyways, Mr. Van Gundy. So
thank you. This has been discussed as mentioned with the condition number 5. I'd like to point out the plans as proposed do show a curb around the perimeter of the pervious surface, impervious surface. So if that maintains, the stormwater would be directed away from your property. But in any event, before any building permits are issued for construction, the city engineer's office has very specific criteria for stormwater. One of which is that, any adjacent stormwater doesn't go over the property line onto another property. I mean, there's some exceptions to that the city engineer's office would be better to address. But in general, this project will address all of the stormwater quality and the quantity.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, I was going to say thank you, Mr. Van Gundy and Mr. Good. Any other questions?
I have none.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there anybody else who has any questions on the general review portion or general development review? All right, hearing no other questions or comments from the community, I will kick it back to any remaining questions or comments from members of the Planning Commission. For the
Mr. McLeister, can you hear me? This is Osborne.
I can hear you, Mr. Osborne.
I never did get an answer as to what the total dollar investment in this project is. I would hope you could at least quote that investment in the community.
That's information that I don't think we were even provided. And I don't know that it's necessarily germane to our discussion this evening. If the applicant wishes to share, they certainly can, but I don't have that information, Mr. Osborne.
Well, that's surprising. I would think everybody be waving flags and saying, hey, we're getting a $10 million investment. So it's a simple, straightforward question.
Yeah, so this is Jeff Martin again with ICP. It is north of that number. I don't have the exact investment number in front of me right now, but safe to say it's north of the number just stated. So it's significant, multi-million-dollar investment in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Okay, well, thank you.
And did that conclude your comments and questions, Mr. Osborne?
Yes, it did, and I'll follow up. And I said previously, I did take the oath. I saw Mr. Revolt come back later and reiterate that he had taken it as well. So you can, I'm just reconfirming that.
I appreciate it, Mr. Osborne. Is there anybody else from the community who'd like to speak on item number 6 on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, I will kick it.
Yeah, this is Anthony Howe when I take the oath.
Well, actually, this portion is not under an adjudication hearing, so no oath would be required here for item number 6.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering how this is going to affect the property values, like around the neighborhood, things like that. I mean, if they're going to be lower, are they going to be higher? I'm just curious.
And actually, first, can I have you come back on and give your? Did you say your name was Anthony? Just for the record.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Sorry, Anthony Heilman. Yeah.
Okay. That's a question that I don't have an answer for, and I don't know that necessarily fits in with the information that we had this evening. I mean, I would kick it back to anybody from the administration if they, Mr. Van Gundy, if you had any comment on that.
The project is an improvement and investment in the community. It's similar to the construction that is there. We anticipate that property values would maintain or improve, given that this does clean up many of the parking areas. We are seeing an expansion in essentially revitalization to the workforce. We don't anticipate any adverse markets values on that, but there again, we also don't have what the future holds. I mean, there are obviously many other factors that influence the property values, but what's been presented to us at this point, we don't have any indication that it would have an adverse effect on the property values.
Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Van Gundy. Okay, anybody else from the community? And I think I've prematurely tried to move on, so I'll give a little extra time this time. Is there anybody from the community who would like to speak on item number 6? Okay, hearing nobody chiming in, I will throw this back to members of the Planning Commission or the city for any additional comments or questions. Okay, at this point in time, I think we would entertain a motion for item number 6 on our agenda, and I think we should keep in mind the same conditions that were discussed brought up when we discussed item number 5. If we could have those pulled back up on the screen. And do we have a motion for item number 6?
This is Eric Delpez. I'll make a motion to approve item number 6, contingent upon the attached conditions from Martin, the items 1 through 7, and the fire department letter.
Figures Delpez. All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Peter Volas will second it.
All right, we have a second from Peter Volas. Could we please have the clerk call the vote?
Mr. Delpez?
Yes.
Mr. McLeister?
Yes.
Mr. Mahousen?
Yes.
Mr. Volas?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. At this point, we have reached the end of our agenda for this evening, and I want to thank you all for attending. And at this point, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Peter Volas have a motion to adjourn.
All right, we have a motion from Dieter Volas. Do we have a second?
Second. I'll second. Eric.
All right. Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. That concludes our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
And congratulations, by the way, for Mr. McLeod.